This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing in partnership with the NAAIC on February, what is it?
19th and 20th, Miami, at Miami-Dade College in downtown Miami.
You've become the singer on the podcast. That's fun. This is sponsored by google.org, and you can learn more at naaic.ai. Liz, we are supposed to be together in studio, but we're here on Riverside FM, which is really a fantastic tool, by the way. What is going on?
Man, we have a lot of snow out there. There is easily about 18 inches, maybe 20 here in the northwest corner of Connecticut. You are even further north in Massachusetts. So we are stuck inside and not going anywhere.
Yep, sad but true. What is it, the mailman, like rain or snow? So apparently snow will in fact stop ChatEDU from getting, I think the office closed like days ago. They're like, it's going to snow, we're going to close.
But it didn't actually stop the show. Like, we persevered.
Yes, you're right. We are like the postal person. We just don't have to be outside in the poor thing. And the door's always open all the time. Oh, feels really cold. Anyhow, I did a really good job, though, snow blowing my mailbox out, because that's really important that you make it easy for the mail folks to get to the box.
You know what's even more important?
Oh, my God. We're on this rabbit hole. We haven't even started. Go ahead. What's more important, Doc?
I'm serious. You have to dig out your fire hydrants. Please, please, please dig out your fire hydrants. That is really, really crucial. Sorry, this is now a public safety podcast, but please dig out your fire hydrants if they're in front of your house.
I'm jealous. I don't have a fire hydrant within miles. All right. So let's jump right in. But yes, we are together again, but apart. And actually next week, we're going to be apart as well, because I'm going to be not at Miami-Dade College, but in Miami Beach, where it's going to be like 57 degrees. So wow. This cold snap is just carrying on. All right, listen, Liz, there's a lot of talk about AI and science. We're going to actually cover an AI and science story next week as well. But there is a hope that these generative AI plus machine learning and AI vision, all these systems are going to make independent, like real breakthroughs in science. But it doesn't always go great, right? We have a story here from Futurism where a scientist was doing some science, maybe a little bit too much offloading science to ChatGPT, and something went south.
Yeah, he lost about 2 years of academic work because so these were lecture notes, grant applications, exams. So he disabled ChatGPT's data consent setting, which wiped his whole chat history with no apparent warning. So this was shared in a Nature column, and it was interesting because there was a lot of online backlash. Some people were not very sympathetic, saying he, maybe he was using it too much, over relying on AI, and also kind of questioning, like, you're a scientist and you didn't back this up somewhere. You were just leaving it in your chat history. OpenAI disputed his claim and said that, stating that there would have been some sort of confirmation prompt. But, it definitely sparked some conversations around generative AI's reliability. And then, of course, its use in academic workflows. So, I mean, I'd be pretty upset if I lost all my ChatGPT history things, but I wouldn't be handicapped by it.
And he, by the way, he is a University of Cologne professor named Marcel Bucher. And I'm taking a guess on that, but as an international traveler, do you know why I think it's Bucher? I could be totally wrong. Could be Boucher, could be Butcher. Doubtful. Why'd I go with Bucher?
I'm thinking because you deduced that this person is probably German speaking as someone from the University of Cologne. And that seems like the German pronunciation.
So Marcel, if we've misrepresented your name, I just try to keep up with Liz on her international travels and her insights. Definitely let us know. So with that, Liz, I am not Marcel Butcher or Boucher or Bucher. I don't know. I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is ChatEDU, the show about AI in education. Today's episode has the one features educators have demanded arrived. Question mark, question mark, question mark. We'll explore an important new update among lots of others from Google at BETT or the BET conference in the UK.
But first, we'll hit a rundown from the Swiss Alps and beyond. Then we'll explore what finally got Google over the line. Spoiler alert, it's a window into chats. And of course, we'll end with another great Bright Bite.
Fantastic. All right, Liz, let's stay on this idea about Marcel. We're just going to refer to him as Marcel from now on. I'm getting a little anxious about whether I'm really pulling it off. Let's go to Davos. All right, shall we? So last week,
Yeah,
folks were in Davos in Switzerland, the global elite, whatever you want to call it. And by the way, the people from the Brookings Institute report that we covered last week, they were at Davos as well. So you might add this to your list of international destinations that ChatEDU and your AI work will take you.
I hope so.
I bet you do. A really interesting story from CNBC. So the OpenAI CFO, Sarah Friar, she spoke with Squawk Box in Davos. And it was an interesting story in general, right? You know, she said that the company is going to try to shift their revenue mix from 70% consumer, 30% enterprise to something a little bit more 50-50. They are probably taking note of the fact that Anthropic is actually killing it in the enterprise and doing really, really well. But another observation she had was about science, right? About
Okay.
Marcel's work. Maybe that's why his chest disappeared. Maybe they took it, right? So what are they going to try to do in the world of science here that deals with revenue? It's really interesting.
Yeah, so she revealed a future model where OpenAI could take a license or stake in the scientific breakthroughs it helps enable. So, possibly partnering with pharma or biotech firms on drug discovery and then sharing in the outcome value. So, that's an interesting new revenue stream or proposition.
It is. I mean, I thought of all the tools. I mean, think of all the general purpose productivity tools that we've had since the dawn of the computer. The idea that, you know, Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Excel might take some piece. Now, again, this is maybe why this technology is fundamentally different, because Microsoft Word did not, in collaboration with a scientist, you know, do all the things that we've covered in the Bright Bites or potentially cure Parkinson's or ALS. So it'd be interesting to see, but it's also just fun to watch this company, right? They just are announced that they're rolling out ads, as we've shared, to the free and $8 the Go user base. So it's like we might grab some ads or we might cure cancer. We're going to make a buck one way or the other. I'm sounding like I'm being critical and I'm not meaning to. I think it's a really interesting signal. All right, so one more from Davos, really interesting. Actually, Eric Brynjolfsson, who you might recall from the do you recall, Liz, what report Eric Brynjolfsson from Stanford authored?
One of our favorites, Canaries in the Coal Mine, all about
Oh,
the job disruption.
on fire. Yeah, he had all this ADP data, and he and his colleagues, you know, sort of observed real substantial impacts on the first rung of the labor market. He was interviewed by Ina Fried. There were a bunch of really interesting interviews that came out of Davos. I think that was my favorite thing. Like there was either chat about all the whole Greenland, Iceland thing, or
Yeah.
or about like AI. It seemed to be the two prevailing themes from Davos. So the head of the International Monetary Fund, though, I'll let you pronounce her name, was at Davos also talking about, as was Eric Brynjolfsson, talking about AI's impact on the labor market, especially for the youth, which is why this is a story that we come back to a lot, specifically focused around this first rung of the labor market, entry-level jobs. What's going on here?
The chief, Kristalina Georgieva, I'm going to go with,
Nice.
um,
Nice.
warned that AI will affect 60% of jobs in advanced economies, but it's mostly going to impact the younger workers because of those entry level roles disappearing. So she emphasized a major skill shift and urged workers to upskill or reskill in order to remain relevant. So at the same time, we are going to see AI actually boost pay for AI enhanced roles, but those like middle class workers risk being kind of wage stagnation if they miss out on the productivity gains. So, you know, she called for urgent regulation to ensure AI is safe and inclusive, but other people are talking about, you know, concerns about fairness, inequity, and the need to share AI's benefits more broadly across society. Interesting stuff, and it's what we're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's not like we don't want anyone to think that this is frozen in time. There's nothing to do, right? I mean, this is certainly schools and universities are not accustomed to moving as quickly or nimbly as the labor market shift would require, but certainly providing guidance for students around CTE, career and technical ed pathways that feel enduring, and care economy jobs. This isn't just care economy. It could be stuff like hospitality, just where like people engaging with people become really important. Also, how do, as Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google's DeepMind says, and we say a lot here, how do folks become AI ninjas, show that they can use AI as a colleague and a problem solver? So there are steps to take. And she's also talking about reskilling. It's interesting, Sal Khan, This is maybe right before the holidays. I can't remember. He had a big piece out, an editorial saying that all the companies, all the tech companies like AI, and I guess every company is an AI company now, should commit 1% of their profit, not revenue, but profit, to a massive retraining program globally. And actually, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, talks about what he calls a token tax. His is a little bit more about universal basic income and needing to create a social safety net for folks where we're seeing real AI labor displacement. But, interesting that there is a problem here, but it's not a problem without some moves that folks can take. I'm not quite sure how we go from the Swiss Alps and Davos to Pokemon and Dungeons and Dragons, but you were excited about this story. So we have covered how we're in that funnel where we're sort of starting a little bit wide, a little labor market, a little trendy stuff. But interesting that AI models have been trained and tested, and even like AI agents have been trained and tested against things like Pokemon Go or the game Go. But here we have Dungeons and Dragons. Are you into this because your brother is a Dungeons and Dragons person? Are you a Dungeons and Dragons person secretly? That somehow in the decade knowing each other, I have not discovered this about you.
I am not a Dungeons and Dragons person, but my brother is a huge Dungeons and Dragons person, and I have lots of
Had a
people in
feeling.
my life who are big Dungeons and Dragons people, because it has gone from being like super niche to being like much more mainstream and like cool nerd. I'm actually reading a young adult fiction novel right now where there's a lot of they're playing a game similar to Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's just fun. Like so many schools now have Dungeons and Dragons clubs, so it's very like in. But the story connects to AI because researchers are actually using Dungeons and Dragons to find breaking points of major AI models. So, from what I know about Dungeons and Dragons, and I know I can already feel my brother like getting ready to text me as I say things that are going to be inaccurate, but it's a very complex game, and there's a storyline, and people take on these personas and characters. And the way that they're kind of testing these models is to see if they can hold on to the storyline, the plot points, the things that have happened, as well as stay in character. And this is just a model because we're asking AI to do these very complex things in the real world, not but something that is much lower stakes. See, this is where I'm going to get in trouble because my brother will say Dungeons and Dragons is very high stakes. But something that's lower stakes, like a Dungeons and Dragons game, can be a great testing ground to see if the model can maintain all of those things over the course of a long game. So,
Okay, so we're
um,
all on the edge of our Dungeons and Dragons seat. How did it do?
okay. So, um, they tested a bunch of different models. So Claude 3.5 Haiku stood out as the best for staying in character. GPT 4.0 performed well, but was less consistent. And DeepSeek V3 kind of struggled. So all the models did some hallucination over time, like attacking some already dead enemies. One AI controlled monster even taunted players mid battle with lines like, "Shiny man's gonna bleed." So, um, you know, it's a great example of how D&D can reveal breakdowns in memory, reasoning, role play, better than just like the standard benchmarks we've been using. So, what a fun story!
That is a fun story. Yeah, there were a few studies out this week, and we've covered these a lot, where these long, multi-step, complex tasks are still not killing it. And actually, a lot of the labor market projections that I think we're seeing in that IMF story are getting a little bit tempered because we're just, ultimately, if these systems can't perform these long horizon tasks, then we won't see 60% of job dislocation. All right, so let's thread together some interesting stories about what's working and what's not, both in enterprise and K-12 higher education stories. There's a lot going on this week in terms of both how these tools are adopted and also what makes for like more effective adoptions than others. So let's start with OpenAI's introduction for countries. So we've covered a number of stories where OpenAI has like one off at a time. Estonia, the UAE tried to kind of do adoption that's nationwide. So they've now rolled this up into a whole adoption program. So this is OpenAI Education for Countries. I don't have a date on this one, but I think it's just this past week. So OpenAI's Education for Countries initiative partners with national governments to embed tools like ChatGPT, EDU, into schools and universities, right? We saw the big, huge Cal State that was like 500,000 users. So here we're talking about Estonia, Greece, Jordan. Estonia has already reached 30,000 users. Liz, I know, is going to go do a field trip there because she's really into Estonia. And they've launched a major study with Stanford to sort of figure out if this works. So the rollouts prioritize education training, small scale pilots, and then youth protections for sure, which we're going to talk about a bunch in the beneath the surface. But what's interesting about these is that these are not bottom up, right? Like the government signs a contract to say, hey, this is what you're going to do. And this is happening competitively. Anthropic, Microsoft, Google are all really putting on the gas in order to try to get these large adoptions, right? So this was a story from Axios a couple of days ago. Tell us about this one with these major AI firms competing to be the go-to in the classroom.
The education field is huge. So they are trying to capture the attention of people in the education market. So Anthropic is partnering with Teach for All to reach 100,000 educators in 63 countries. Google is integrating Gemini and Notebook LM and Khan Academy for AI enhanced learning. And Microsoft is offering free training and premium tools, including Minecraft based lessons. So Teachers in Anthropic's program will help shape Claude's development while AI adoption in school grows. Concerns about student data privacy and big tech motives remain. So, what is their motivation? How are they protecting student data privacy? But it's going to have huge impacts on how Gen Alpha, the current, kids in school are learning and build AI habits early. And yeah, I mean, you think of the even littler ones, this is going to impact them in the next few years. It goes fast.
I'm looking out the window. It's still snowing. It's crazy. How about you? Little weather check.
Yeah, it's still snowing. Little flurries coming down.
Nuts. All right. So, but we know, right? Look, you could have a statewide adoption or national adoption or a corporate or institutional adoption, whatever the case may be. It's top down at some level. We know that if there isn't buy-in from folks in the field, in this case, teachers, that there's real impacts on the quality of the rollout, the efficacy, the sort of growth that these tools can achieve. So this is a neat pieces from the 74. We've been using the 74 more lately. It's really interesting publication. So this is the title is For AI to Truly Work in the Classroom, Schools Must Give Their Teachers a Say. So what's happening here?
So, a pilot at Dream Charter School in New York City shows how integrating AI into middle school ELA classes improved student writing and freed up teacher time, but only because the educators helped shape that rollout. So, teachers used an AI assistant to guide students step by step through writing tasks, which resulted in more engagement, better benchmark scores. I love this point in the study that one student previously who was disengaged asked to call his mom after getting one of the top scores. Like, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
But the one of the key success factors was that there was early teacher involvement. And, other things like real-time data use, flexibility, and tool design are all important. But most important was that the teachers were involved from the ground up. They were not just handed something and said, use this in your class. They helped design it. It saved them about 50 hours over time, boosted student outcomes. And we see it all the time. We are in schools all the time. And if the teachers don't feel empowered or heard, you can roll out all the tools you want, but they're not going to use them.
Well said, right? I think this is just a stellar observation. So even if it is a top-down government implementation, the vital need to engage teachers in all the steps of the planning process. We just sort of know this, but I think it's worth echoing it. And it's nice to see the statistics as well as that student's reflection borne out here. My favorite of all these like top-down, bottom-up teacher involvement, professor involvement stories right now is from Dartmouth. So Dartmouth has just partnered with Claude. And Dartmouth is fascinating because technically Dartmouth is actually the birthplace of the term artificial intelligence, right? Yep. It was a summer symposium. It's really, so, all these years go by. So Dartmouth partners with Anthropic to implement Claude. And there's a hot debate going on. I really do like the T, don't I? So there's a hot debate going on because the professors feel like they weren't involved in the decision-making at some level, right? And there's a back and forth between leadership and professors. But the interesting angle, I don't know if you remember, maybe 6 months ago, we covered a story where a bunch of Anthropic, right, that has Claude, basically stole a whole bunch of books from a library that they didn't have the rights to train on and got busted. And they admitted it,
Right.
and they settled for $1.5 billion, which the judge is still reviewing because he's like, it's not enough. Like, you pirated a lot of content. 130 of the authors of those books are Dartmouth faculty.
Wow.
130. So here you've got this top-down, bottom-up drama going on, but on top of it, you have this kind of major case of intellectual property theft for the purposes of training a model is going to be implemented. That can you imagine 130 professors? It must have been like a Dartmouth library that the thing digitally busted into. I don't know.
Wow.
I talked to our colleague Cam has a friend who works at Dartmouth, and he's like, I wish they stole one of my books.
Well, because it seems like they're going to get a little bit of money, right?
Yeah, for sure. And in some cases, like, some of these books are great, but maybe didn't like kind of see the kind of, sometimes people write because they want impact and distribution. And so that work will show up there.
Do you think AI is training on my book?
Let's hope so. Whatever. You would think it would love learning they'll love. All right. This question does hit at the adoption story, though, and I couldn't help but notice, really interesting, one of the people that has been fascinating to follow in this space is Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. He's actually behind Liz and my favorite AI tool for many, many months, which was Pi. When's the last time you talked to Pi?
No, Pi has been neglected. I honestly couldn't even tell you.
I don't think I have the app on my phone anymore. So funny. But Hoffman is talking a little bit about, this is in Business Insider, also about this kind of like disconnect between, so a few stories like this we're going to cover right now, the disconnect between the adoption case studies that like leadership might roll out, which is really, it's not the Dungeons and Dragons story, but it is the Dungeons and Dragons test that they were trying to kind of pressure test. And so this idea of like these multi-step autonomous, kind of workflows. And Hoffman says, that's not the way to go. Like, focus on the boring stuff. Focus on the mundane, routine tasks like meetings, note-taking, right? So on the Possible podcast, which is a great podcast, he discusses that AI transformation really depends on these everyday use cases and opening up learning among employees, not these like kind of siloed autonomous efforts, which I think was kind of a neat observation.
I mean, he basically says to, stop focusing on flashy pilot projects, which I might say is your little world model thing, and that we shouldn't be focusing on world models, the flashy thing right now. We should be focusing on the more mainstream uses. So I don't know. Just saying.
Time will tell, Dr. Rade, but I love that there's a little spirited debate here between us. Yeah. Okay. I have lots of thoughts, but I'm going to keep the train moving here. All right. So there's also an interesting difference in the perception between folks in leadership roles and folks in the front lines. And I see this sometimes between like principals and superintendents and curriculum directors and deans, and then college faculty, high school faculty, middle school faculty, and the like. Right. So this is from Mashable. Does AI save time? Executives say yes. Employees say no. Then look at the headlines, like a little clickbaity, because they're both saving time. It's just a question of degrees, right? What do we have here?
Right. So this is a study from Section, and it revealed they say a major disconnect in AI workplace adoption. So 52% of executives say AI saves them 4+ hours weekly, while 67% of employees report little to no time saved. So there was another survey by Workday found 85% of workers spent their saved time fixing AI errors. So most employees remain at beginner level AI use, and 40% say they'd be fine if they never used AI again. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella echoed concerns at Davos, warning that AI must deliver broad, tangible benefits or risk losing public trust. Like you said, we see a difference, but the tasks that an administrator has to do are very different than the tasks that a teacher has to do. And I could see how this may save more time for administrators because of the way they can use AI versus the tasks that a teacher has to do that aren't as susceptible to AI use.
Good. Say a little bit more. So like, let's take a typical superintendent task. Here's my new cell phone policy, pressure test it, tell me how it might be misinterpreted, or help me build an agenda for my summer leadership retreat. So there's a couple admin tasks. What are a couple teacher tasks where you feel like they might get like a lower quality result? Because soups and principals have, love those two among lots of others. Here's a bunch of data, student data, put it in Notebook LN, put a data table together, help me understand the analysis of what's going on. So what's the teacher side that you think might be less efficacious?
Well, I mean, the actual teaching is what teachers spend most of their time doing. And like
I
AI is
see.
not going to replace the teaching, right? Like we hope that most of the teacher's time is spent teaching in a face-to-face, like interactive way with students. And so there just aren't as many. Are there things that teachers can do that can be supported by AI? Sure. It can help write a better lesson. It can help, you know, do like some of the stuff that they're ultimately going to implement, but that's not necessarily saving them time. They're still going to have to implement the lesson. They're still going to be prepped. There's still going to be things that they have to do. I think that teachers are not necessarily saving time, but maybe improving instruction. So it doesn't really count as saved time, right? Like if you're putting an hour into a lesson, either way, and you can put in an hour without AI and you're going to have, a lesson, or you can put in an hour with AI and have a better lesson. Like you didn't save any time. You just got better work, right? Like better outcomes versus for a superintendent or a principal. Like they just have so much time that they have to spend making agendas, writing emails, reading policies. Like teachers don't have to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, you do see in the Gallup polls and a few others that it will say that teachers, because maybe what you did is you got a draft of an email home to a parent that was going to take you an hour, and you did it in 10 minutes because it was a really complicated topic. One of the big time sinks on the teacher side that AI could potentially save is around assessment and feedback. But here again, right, we know this is almost like the folks saying that they have to adjust for all the low quality work that comes out of the models from the frontline workers in the Mashable story. And we know that there's all sorts of pretty significant pitfalls with using AI to save time, using AI for summative assessment, formative assessment,
Right.
great. But yeah, no, I think you make an excellent point, Dr. Rade. Totally wrong about world models, but you're spot on here.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, speaking of no, you might be totally right too. I thought a lot about what you shared last week, and I think there's some really good insights there. So I noticed this 40% say they'd be fine if they never used AI again. And before we go to the beneath the surface, I want to kind of round out this whole little series of stories about adoption and use and ownership and buy-in and all that stuff with a study that came out from The Economist. Sorry, it wasn't a study. It was like basically an opinion piece, but it was undergirded by several studies from 2024 and 25. And I think it's important. I'm seeing more and more of this. I think that folks in our audience are seeing more of it. There is something interesting that's happened where we've seen the success of cell phone bans, at least by some metrics, right? I don't know that there's success in terms of preparing students to navigate a world that is dominated by cell phones and social media, but as far as distractions and focus and all that good stuff, right? And so that is quickly snowballing into some serious shade on all screen time. And we're seeing more of these studies calling into question in some cases legitimately, like nothing's a binary. It's the problem with ChatEDU, frankly, is that we're often covering stories which people get published because they produce and project the world as a binary. EdTech blows, does nothing, which is really the quick version of this study, right? So, but nonetheless, it becomes part of a chorus of voices. So this is The Economist, January 22. EdTech is profitable. It's also mostly useless is the title. So tell us about this opinion piece.
So, this opinion piece argues that despite decades of investment, educational technology has delivered limited learning benefits. So, it references a meta analysis of 119 early literacy tech interventions, finding only marginal improvements. So, teachers report feeling burdened, not empowered, and widespread adoption of devices and software has not translated into meaningful academic gains. Denmark's recent national pilots to return to textbooks and implement digital bans kind of underscores a growing international skepticism about technology in schools.
I have to pause here. Had you seen that? So this was not in The Economist
Yeah,
story, by the way, but yeah, you had seen that we didn't cover it, I don't think, right?
we didn't cover it, but we've read it.
There's some pilots, right, where they're just saying like, no screens, no screen time, textbooks, and also in
Back to books.
extracurricular activities. And the people who run like the gymnastics and after school clubs, which look fantastic, by the way, loving it. Lots of focus.
Yeah.
All right. I
My daughter's
apologize.
volleyball team, they are not allowed to have their phones near them. So their bags go against one wall with their phones, and the water bottles have to go against the other wall because the girls were saying like, "Oh, I need a water break," but they were going to their bags to get their water where their
Totally.
phones were. So the
Yep.
coaches now, the water bottles go against the complete opposite wall. There is no need to ever go near your bag.
Clever. All right. So the
Yeah.
Danes have done that. And it's another take on this. So, I mean, I think we're going to see more of this. And it may be a question of it not being a binary. So rather than, thinking of edtech as inherently good or bad, we have referred to a couple times, we have a SAMR prompt up on the Skills 21 prompt library, which you can find at skills21.org/prompts. It's midway down the page. You can just search for SAMR. But it's a nice way to go like lesson by lesson or unit by unit or course by course or the higher ed level across the whole syllabus and say like, hey, look, sometimes we're just using a quiz in tech over paper because we just wanted to use tech, right? There's a lot of cases of substitution or augmentation. So how do we really, think about, well, when students create an interactive simulation or publish real work for authentic audiences, much like a lot of the work that Liz talks about in her book, Learning They'll Love, but all sorts of applied. I mean, there's all sorts of applied uses of technology that are modification and redefinition. It would be hard to do that work. And in reality, if we're really right about this thing being a general purpose technology, it's hard to imagine that the Denmark strategy is bulletproof because kids have to be able to be prepared for this stuff. I don't know if you recall that Tom Screese, when we did his episode, Westport's doing a screen time like audit or assessment. I was there last week talking to some of the leadership about that. So, I mean, I don't know that blanket enthusiasm or blanket rejection is the thoughtful way to go, but some kind of middle ground here might be helpful.
Well, I think about when we had to go to everything on screens during the pandemic, there were things that were more difficult to do because you had to
Sure.
do them on screen. So Adam teaches sixth grade math, and he really rarely has use for the computers, and it became a lot more difficult for him to teach online and when kids could only use computers because math notation is very difficult to do on the computer. And you're just at sixth grade, you're really just like aligning things, and you have to do it on paper and pencil. But there are other places where it makes a lot more sense to use technology. And, there are things that he could have kids practice, like using IXL, but for the most part, Adam's kids never open a computer in his classroom. And if they did, it would really be to take a quiz on a Google form rather than to just do it on a piece of paper.
Right. It might automate something for him, but it's not positively impacting the learning gains for sure.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting because we know that there's a lot of people in the ChatEDU audience that are responsible for leading these AI efforts in their districts, whether it's from a PDEC or an AI planning team or a committee at their university. And you can see here that this blowback, especially as AI in the news becomes increasingly impactful, whether it's jobs or the environment or data centers. So you can see this gaining steam, and it's going to be important that these planning teams dedicate some focused time to discuss this and think about, developing a balanced strategy as well as coming up with a communications plan around it. So will be interesting for sure. All right. So listen, before we hit the beneath the surface and a little house ad here for the student AI literacy course, I want to just briefly mention that we are coming up on our 100th episode. If you're interested in giving us any feedback, send us a video, whatever, www.skills21.org/ChatEDU100. But we did get some input from some listeners. Well, a listener who lives in Liz's house that we're talking too much about it. So, and frankly, he or she is probably right. So, we're, and I promise the 100th episode is not going to be like a droning on about ourselves. Frankly, the most interesting thing about this podcast, we're grateful that folks find it useful, but it's really the stuff. Any email that Liz and I get where it's like, hey, thanks for keeping me up to date, or you guys do the hard work to keep me informed, or I find you funny, or whatever the case may be. The more interesting part of those emails is what you tell us you're doing, right? We see all these really cool examples where people are just doing really innovative things. It's like, here's a gem I tried, or here's the thing I vibe coded because you covered it, right? So, we seem like obsessively, narcissistically obsessed with the 100th episode. And maybe we are a little bit, but mostly we're just really, really grateful. So, that's it. That's all I'm going to say. Right?
Good job.
As we look to the second half of this academic year, many schools are exploring how to implement AI literacy efforts for students, building on the success of our AI teacher micro-credential EdAdvance and ChatEDU are launching a middle and high school AI literacy program for students ages 13 and above. This cutting-edge curriculum is hosted on our FERPA-compliant AI platform and will help students develop the knowledge and skills they'll need to navigate AI now and into the future. To learn more, shoot us an email at chateduvance.org, or you can visit skills21.org/AI/learn AI.
All right, Matt, now it's time to go beneath the surface, and we are going to talk about generative AI's product safety standards. And this is from the UK Department for Education, gov.uk.
And we're burying the headline here a little bit. I mean, this is actually a big deal. So mostly this is a Google announcement, but we had to wrap it around a little, educational safety for sure. But there's a timing between the UK Department of Education, or Department for Education, the DFE, and Google's pretty significant announcements at it's BETT, BETT, which stands for the British, what is it? It's like the British Educational Training and Technology Show, I think was its original name. Huge, right? Like, FETC, but for all of Europe and folks all over the world. But this is a big deal. Do you feel the excitement? What was the episode title?
Your excitement.
The number one most asked for feature. And that's really where we're going to go to. But let's start with UK, UK.gov. What do we got?
The UK Department for Education issued detailed guidelines to ensure that generative AI products used in schools meet strict safety, transparency, and development standards. So these standards require AI tools to clearly state their educational purpose and intended use cases, prevent access to harmful content, and include robust filtering, security, and privacy controls. So crucially, this is the big one, is that AI tools must log student interactions, tracking prompts, the time they're on there, usage duration, and signs of cognitive offloading or emotional dependence, and provide teacher-friendly reports that surface these concerning patterns and summarize the engagement trends. This is big stuff. So the standards emphasize that AI tools should support learning without replacing it. So it discourages the full answer generation by default and instead promotes scaffolded student-led inquiry. It requires design elements that avoid anthropomorphism and emotional manipulation, and mandate escalation protocols for safeguarding concerns. So, that there are some sort of notifications that are going to adults in the system to alert anyone if there's concerns. They are not legally binding, but the expectations tie closely to the Online Safety Act and the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the European Union's comprehensive data privacy law. And this suggests a roadmap for both the regulatory compliance and people that are making procurement decisions. So the guidance also aligns with new features from leading edtech platforms that are offering actionable educator dashboards, which reinforces this national move towards just AI transparency in the classroom. I think that's the bottom line, is like AI needs to be transparent, it needs to be purposeful, and it needs to be safe.
Yeah, well said. And nice summary. This report is worth looking at in some detail because so many of the topics that we've discussed, whether it's cognitive offloading, the emotional manipulation, like they're drilling into, if you're making the Anne Frank bot, what's the language like? What's the hello like? What's the goodbye like? Is there any manipulative language here that's creating a false sense of, as you said, like anthropomorphic identification, all this kind of stuff? The offloading requirement is crazy. Now, interestingly, right, it's not law, although it does map to the GDPR. But the idea that, you have to disclose when an AI tool could be used for offloading, AKA write me the 1,000-word essay versus, coach me through the process, that's tricky. I mean, you've suggested many times that when schools have Gemini, if they could have just the guided learning mode locked on, it'd be really interesting. Because in that case, the thing would always be positioned as a tutor. But if it's the open model and I can turn guided learning off, then I'm kind of violating or at least running up against this standard. But the one that was most interesting, just because we hear it the most, is the requirement to disclose a data dashboard with actionable insights that anybody could understand coming out of these things. Now, they don't say you have to read each chat, right? Which would be the sort of
Right.
Magic School AI, Snorkel standard. But it basically is creating, like, there's been these pressure points on Google when it comes to GEMS and Notebook, just to be super plain about it. One pressure point is that one of the reasons that schools are holding on to Magic School and School AI and Snorkel and Conmigo is that they do allow, or at the higher ed level, Boodlebox or Nectar, right? They do allow for this really transparent set of insights, very helpful insights into how students are using these tools. And Google has just, only recently rolled out 6 months ago GEMS and Notebook LM as student facing, and they didn't have these data insights. So there's pressure competitive commercially, but now you've got government saying this is a requirement. So that leads us to
the mic drop moment.
What's the mic drop moment from?
No, you drop it.
Okay, so January 21st, the Google Keyword blog, Transform Teaching and Learning with updates in Gemini and Google Classroom. And by the way, this was true last year at BETT as well. I don't recall exactly what they were, but these are basically twice a year, right? Google makes some like major announcements in the education space. And this was a good one. There's all sorts of cool stuff. You play with some of this. So let's go through them. At BETT 2026, Google announced some major updates for Gemini and Google Classroom aimed at saving educators time, enhancing personalized learning, on and on. The first big one was SAT practice, right? So they partner up with the Princeton Review, and they basically built right in Gemini for Education, or probably Gemini, just vanilla too, this full-blown SAT prep. And of course, you went and did it, right?
Of course, I loved standardized tests. I'm such a weirdo. I really wanted to do the math one, but I was too lazy to go get a piece of paper because I knew I would use scrap paper. So I did the ELA. But yeah, I said to Gemini, I want to do a practice verbal section of the SAT. And so it gave me right there 2 practice tests. It timed me. It told me I had 30 minutes and the timer was there. I went through the questions, they're all multiple choice. They are SAT type questions. I answered them. I did both sections. At the end, it gave me my score out of 800. And then broke it down by like the grammar part, the reading comprehension, the, different things, and showed me how many out of how many I got right. I could go back and look through every question, see what I got right, explanation right there, see what I got wrong. Yeah. I mean, if I was a motivated student that wanted to study for the SATs for free, I could just do practice SAT after practice SAT right there.
Right. And that's the thing. If you do it again, too, it builds a profile of you as a test taker, or specifically for this content. And then it provides like actionable insights and specific guidance for you based on this. This is really, really, Google's not shy to roll the big stuff. Now, I do believe the audience wants to know, how'd you do all these many years later?
I got almost the exact same score that I got 30 years ago when I took the SAT verbal part, even though it has changed over and over and over again. Like, my verbal score has stayed the same.
Right now, I don't know if Kitty is happy or sad, but yeah, go ahead.
So I got a 650 out of 800. Okay. I am notoriously bad at using commas, but yeah, 650. I was okay with it.
I wonder if you threw an M dash in there, it would have improved your score. Yeah. So I did not go take it because I got stuck at the calendar questions. Actually, Liz pointed out that my calendar literacy is not great. I don't know if we can see this in the wide shot, but I have two poinsettias behind me, one red, one gold, because apparently I'm in denial of the fact that it is, look, it's snowing outside. It feels perfectly suited for this.
Poinsettias are Christmas. It is not Christmas time. We are on our way to...
They're robust and they're living and they're pretty. Okay, so...
They're poisonous to cats.
Well, luckily I don't have any. So, all right. So other stuff, AI generated infographics, which we've had for a little while here. Support for Moodle, which is interesting. I don't know if you know, there's this learning management system called Moodle. I actually work at 2 universities that are still on Moodle, which is kind of wild, but they have this thing called the LTI, which is an integration tool. And I sent both those universities emails this morning saying, hey, looks like Notebook and GEMS is going to come to Moodle with data insights. So there's good stuff there. We've got expanded Notebook LM integration, new stuff in Google Classroom, including audio and video recording both ways, learning standards tagging, which is interesting. But the one that's kind of most important from our perspective is this. I will read it word for word. It's not a long statement. It says, get insights on how students are interacting with teacher-led GEMS and Notebook LM. Educators will soon see actionable insights, providing opportunities for transparent, reflective approach to AI learning experiences. We'll see how far they go with that. There is a pilot. We'll put the pilot into the link. I signed up for it. It tells me, by the way, the fact that there's a pilot, this is not going to be happening tomorrow. I think this is probably going to take another few months, but interesting development for sure. Wouldn't you say, Doc? Is this as exciting? Did it merit a mic drop or did I overhype it?
I think this merits a mic drop. I mean, the teacher insights into what students are doing on these AI platforms is huge. I mean, it's where schools have been struggling with going to Gemini since the summer. I mean, so the solution for many schools has been, okay, we're going to open up Gemini, but we still have another program like GoGuardian monitoring. So, which has probably made GoGuardian very happy that Gemini has not rolled these out. And maybe GoGuardian is crying this week because they may not be as needed. Although, I mean,
I think you'll need
GoGuardian,
both. Yeah.
I think you'll still need both, but there's definitely, this is huge. It's what teachers have been asking for. We were shocked from the beginning that it wasn't part of the way they rolled it out. And Gemini, Google really said we didn't put it for a reason. And now they're kind of not going back on it, but responding to the customer needs.
And the government demand in the UK here. So it's really interesting. All right. Well, we will keep an eye on this for sure. It will take a little bit of time to evolve, but we'll keep a close watch. All right, Doc, let's do a little Bright Bite.
Yes, it's always at the end of our show, it's time for our Bright Bite, where we highlight ways that AI is doing things that are great for the world. So this week from the World Economic Forum, the title is What Works in AI? The Leading Companies Turning AI into Real World Impact. So this isn't necessarily one story, but a way that AI is impacting lots of things. So the World Economic Forum's MINDS program, MINDS program, recognizes companies using AI to deliver measurable impact with a focus on sustainability, inclusivity, and operational scale. So they are currently in their second cohort, which features 15 global organizations that are using AI in areas like battery design, power grid optimization, healthcare screening, and energy efficiency. And these are worldwide. We've got China, Saudi Arabia. These are worldwide organizations. So there is a strong climate technology thread that runs through the cohort, with many projects reducing emissions, energy use, and supporting clean energy. So notably, innovators from China, Saudi Arabia, and India highlight the growing leadership of the global South in AI deployment, which is really important and something that we want to encourage and highlight. So the report is called Proof Over Promise, and it provides a practical framework for scaling AI responsibly, emphasizing how to move from pilot to enterprise adoption. So the third MINDS cohort is open for applications right now. They just opened on January 20th. So if you know people in these businesses or are just interested to see what they're looking for when they are opening these cohorts and what the MINDS projects are doing, go check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Fantastic. Great Bright Bite. Yeah. And it's interesting because we start in Davos and we end in Davos. And much like Davos, it's continuing to snow outside here in Western Massachusetts. And I bet it is there in New Milford, Connecticut. So we'll see. Be interested. I've got two presentations tomorrow. We'll see if they happen or it gets pushed back. And are you on the road this week or?
I'm supposed to be in a school tomorrow, but the district has a half day. So if there's any chance of a delay in the morning, they're going to just end up closing school. So I'm a little hesitant I'll get a plan for it, obviously, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen.
All right. Well,
we'll see. Time
will tell. But in the meantime, we will absolutely
roll the credits.
Wow, that was very engaged. There's a whole head swing going on there. That was great, Doc. I really appreciate it. All right, well, be safe. I'm going to go start my snowblower, and I think you're going to go shovel, right? Sorry. Adam's going to go shovel, right? I got a little confused there for a second. All right, be safe, and we'll see you soon. And I will see you next week from beautiful Miami.
Roll the credit.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at ChatEDU@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by edadvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the Executive Director at edAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore edAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to ChatEDU.